Hey guys, Nintendrew here. I am finally back from my cross-country trip to E3 2019, and I'm ready to show you guys all of the coolest stuff that I found on the show floor. Yeah, I know E3 was a month ago. I was busy, okay? So, join me as we take a look at some of the coolest new tech in retro gaming coming the rest of this year and beyond. Let's get to it. Alright, so on the first day of E3, the first place I made sure to stop by was the Hyperkin booth, because of course they had revealed just days before that they would be showing off the Retron Ultra, a brand new Nintendo 64 clone console. Now unfortunately this guy was not playable yet, and it's still in very early prototyping stages, so there wasn't a whole lot of concrete information they could give about this thing quite yet. But what I did find very interesting is they mentioned that it's not set in stone exactly how this thing will work. So many people online noticed that this is actually a Mupen box in its current form, but the Hyperkin representative I spoke to indicated that they aren't actually sure what the end result will be. This is, again, very early stages, but it's just exciting to see some company, any company, working on a new Nintendo 64 clone console. After that, I also had the chance to try out the new Admiral Controller for 64. This is a wireless Bluetooth controller, and it almost feels like a mixture between the Retro Fighters Brawler 64 and the HoriPad Mini. Of course, both of those controllers are some of my favorites, and the Admiral feels like a worthy addition to that lineup. It's great that Nintendo 64 players are getting an even wider range of controller options. On the other side of the booth, they were also displaying the Hyper Blaster HD, which is a modern light gun for the Nintendo Entertainment System, which works on high-definition television sets. It's really kind of funny how this thing works. I actually hadn't seen one of these in person yet, but the way it works is you plug in your cartridge into a little adapter, almost kind of like a real-time ROM hack, which allows you to set a sort of delay threshold on the television to match up with its input delay. Really a clever little solution to a modern problem with retro games. Some very cool stuff coming out of Hyperkin this year. After my meeting with Hyperkin, we went over to check out the Arcade 1-Up booth, and they were showing off quite a few interesting arcade machines. You may have seen these in Walmart stores more recently. They're basically just more affordable arcade machines for collectors to have in their own home. One product they were demoing, though, that I thought was pretty cool were these wall cabinets. These are just meant to be mounted on the wall and work as fully featured miniature arcade cabinets. So they were showing off Space Invaders, Galaga, Pac-Man, all the good stuff. Next up, as we were wandering the show floor, I happened to come across a new piece of tech that might look a little bit familiar. This is a pair of mobile controllers from a company called Black Shark. And as you might have guessed, they're pretty much just Nintendo Switch Joy-Con for your phone. They even have this little plastic grip that looks almost identical to the Joy-Con grip. So if you have a pair of these controllers along with the case, it's almost like turning your cell phone into a Nintendo Switch. It's kind of cool. The major difference you'll notice is on the right controller, instead of having another joystick, they have a touchpad, almost like the Steam controller. If you've ever used one of those, it felt very similar to the Steam controller. On top of the controller kits themselves, they were also demoing a standalone gaming cell phone as part of the Black Shark product line. I am not the biggest mobile gamer, but as far as mobile games go, this was probably the coolest thing that I saw on the show floor this year. I hope to be able to check these out myself eventually as well. And of course, I could not forget my last appointment of the day was to play Luigi's Mansion 3 at Nintendo's booth. And I've got to say, if you are a fan of Luigi's Mansion at all, you should get excited. This was an amazing demo. It was only about 15 minutes, but obviously I could have sat there and played this demo all day. I haven't yet beaten the second Luigi's Mansion game, Dark Moon on 3DS, because honestly it didn't really capture my interest as well as the first game on GameCube did. But when I picked up Luigi's Mansion 3, it felt like a true return to form for the series and was just full of character. The puzzles were super clever. I am fully on board for this newest iteration. I cannot wait to pick this up when it comes out in October. Alright, so moving on to day 2 in sunny Los Angeles, California. The first meeting I had on the second day was with Marseille, and you might remember them from my E3 video last year where they were showing off the M cable. So if you don't remember, the M cable is a plug-and-play graphics upscaler built into an HDMI cable. What it does is it takes your low-resolution game footage and almost sort of repaints it at a higher resolution to help push that footage just a little bit further as far as visual fidelity. Well, this year they were showing off the brand new M Classic Classic. This has the same technology as the M cable, but built into a small, compact plug-and-play adapter. On screen here, I'll show some of the examples that they were showing in the booth of how this can help upgrade your old console footage to higher resolutions with improved visual fidelity. It's actually really impressive to see in person. On top of that, the M Classic has a brand new mode switch, which allows you to turn off video processing altogether, or to put it in retro mode, which, as I understand it, is designed specifically to allow older games with pixel art to remain crisp and have those, sharp pixel edges, which is definitely a welcome addition to the Marseille M cable lineup. After the show, Marseille reached out to me, and I do have one of these M Classic units in hand, ready for review, and that should be going up hopefully around this time next week. We'll see. So if you want more information on the M Classic, stay tuned and I will have some impressions for you very shortly. After that, I ran by the New Wave Toys booth to check out some of their very small miniature arcade machines. And if you haven't heard of them, New Wave Toys and Replicade focus on making very faithful reproductions of full-size arcade cabinets at a miniature scale. So these are real high-quality little machines. They're not just like, little cheapo plastic toys. These are meant to be real collector's items. But the really cool news here is that they are actually branching out to a new line of products called Replatronics. So in addition to their normal lineup of arcade machines, they're going to start offering other iconic 80s and 90s technology, like this miniature boombox. So if you need any more 90s swag, New Wave Toys has got you covered. Now this next booth is very exciting. This was the Polymega booth. If you haven't heard of the Polymega, it is a brand new retro console that is kind of like an ultimate all-in-one machine. It supports PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Mega Drive. Including region exclusives, it supports, I think, upwards of 30 different systems altogether, which is kind of insane. The console works based on this concept of removable adapters called element modules, which allow you to plug in different cartridges for different systems. On top of that, you can use the Polymega interface to install your games and build your own digital library so that you don't have to keep on swapping out discs and cartridges and wearing out your physical media. In summary, when the Polymega launches, you'll be able to pick up whichever modules you like for whichever different consoles you want to play, and you're good to go with one box. And this console is set to be launched later this year. I think they said Q4, so if this sounds like something that would be up your alley, make sure to definitely keep your eye out. It's really shaping up to be something pretty special. After spending some quality time with the Polymega, I met up with the folks from Bionic Gaming and My Arcade to check out the upcoming Retro Champ console behind closed doors. The Retro Champ almost reminds me of like a Nintendo Switch, but for NES and Famicom games. It's kind of a beast. It's this big brick of a console, but true to its name, it plays both NES and Famicom games through one of the two cartridge ports on the top or bottom. It has a kickstand so that you can play it on your tabletop, and it comes with two wireless controllers. There's also an HDMI port on the back so that you can hook it up to the big screen. And overall, it feels pretty nice. It's actually got like a pretty ergonomic feel to it. The games play well as far as I can tell. And it's going to retail for just $79.99, which is fairly reasonable for a system like this. You might have some trouble trying to fit it in a small bag, and it's certainly not going to go anywhere near your pockets. But for what it's worth, the Retro Champ is a pretty cool portable hybrid system. It really does feel almost like an old school Switch. After the second day of E3, we decided to take a rest over at the YouTube Gaming Creator Lounge, and I've got to show you guys what was going on here, because this space was absolutely awesome. The entrance to this lounge was set up to look exactly like a retro video game store, even down to the neon sign outside the door. Once you stepped foot inside, there were game cartridges in cases, and, consoles on the walls, controllers, cords, everything you would find at your local retro store. But as you might expect, this was no ordinary store. This was all just set up for this event. After verifying your identity, the staff would lead you behind to this huge loft area, which had arcade systems, a claw machine, places to sit, an open coffee bar, and a separate second story with demos of Doom Eternal running on Google Stadia set up for us to try out. I did get some hands-on time with that Stadia demo, and I think I might have to make a separate video about my impressions of Google Stadia. So if you're at all interested in that, stay tuned for that as well. But yeah, this space was just super amazing. Of course, it had, crazy fast internet for anybody who was there to work, but there was plenty of fun to have as well. And as you stepped outside, there was this beautiful grassy area to relax and have conversations with other content creators and YouTube staff.
What's up, dudes? How do you do?
It was really awesome to have a place like this to hang out at while the show was going on, to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle and kick back in the shade with other gaming content creators. This was definitely one of our highlights for E3 this year. Just a really awesome place to hang out all around. Coming up on day 3, the final day of E3, I wanted to make sure before I finished my tour of the show floor that I took a stop by Retrobit. You might remember just a couple weeks back I reviewed their new Tribute 64 controller, and it looks like they are not ready to rest anytime soon because they were showing off 3 new prototypes for brand new controllers. The first one over here is a new Dreamcast controller, but what I was more excited to check out was this Super Nintendo style controller for Nintendo 64. They called this the N64 Digi Con Gamepad, and I can imagine a lot of people who have problems with the original 64 controller will appreciate having yet another option for a more traditional control scheme. And finally, they were also showing a prototype for a wireless Tribute 64 controller. It looks like they also addressed some of the concerns about the D-pad placement, so this will be yet another option for N64 players looking for a more modern controller layout. So all in all, some pretty neat stuff on display from Retrobit this year as well. Of course, the National Video Game Museum made their yearly appearance as well, showing off some of the rarest and most sought-after collectibles of gaming history. Some of the highlights I noticed while touring their floor space was this Singer Isaac sewing machine. That, of course, is the sewing machine for Game Boy Color. And as always, they brought along a Nintendo World Championships cart, a PowerFest 94 cartridge, and just a whole collection of gaming history. Very cool stuff. So that was about it for E3 itself, but after the show, I wanted to take the guys by a few local retro gaming stores in the Los Angeles area, and our first stop was at Retro Game Camp in Little Tokyo. Here we met up with some of the Metal Jesus Rocks crew, John Riggs, Kelsey Lewin, and Kinsey Burke, who all happened to be in the area checking out some of their own games as well. And I don't have any footage of it, unfortunately, but we did also run to a local sushi place to grab some lunch, and you'll just have to trust me, we had some great sushi in the area as well. So Retro Game Camp focuses almost exclusively on Japanese imports. So they had all sorts of Famicom and Super Famicom titles and lots of cool Japanese exclusive titles to look through, special edition consoles and that sort of thing. But the most interesting thing I ended up finding and picking up was an AV modded Famicom system. Believe it or not, I did not own a Famicom prior to this trip, so I figured it was high time that I go ahead and pick up an original Famicom system. And of course I couldn't leave without picking up a game, so I also grabbed a copy of Super Mario Bros. For the Famicom. After our trip to Little Tokyo, we took a stop by another local store called World 8. This was a more traditional American retro game store, but on top of current and classic video games, they also sold a wide array of collectibles and figurines, plushies, and that sort of thing. But of course, as I was browsing through the store shelves, I zeroed in on a stack of Nintendo Power magazines. I'm getting closer and closer to finishing my set of Nintendo Power, so I probably picked up a stack of 5 or 6 different magazines, and I'm looking forward to finishing that part of my collection. Alright, that's gonna do it for this video. I had such a blast at E3 2019, and I cannot wait to go back next year. I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share it with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks again for watching and for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you like this one, here are 2 more videos you might like as well. As always, if you like what I do and would like to help out the channel, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. And otherwise, I hope you look forward to the next one. Take care!